Hello, everyone. My name is H. Melt. I am the poetry coordinator at Women and Children First Bookstore in Chicago. And I would like to begin tonight the same way that we start our events in person, which is with a land acknowledgement. And the land on which Women and Children First sits is the occupied territory of the Peoria, Potawatomi, and Miami people. There are over 75,000 Indigenous people of many nations living in Illinois, and we encourage you to research whose land you're on in your own homes and communities. A few local orgs that we like to support and shout out are the American Indian Center of Chicago and Chi Nations Youth Council. Women and Children First is currently open to the public for in-store shopping with masks required and limited capacity. We're processing online orders every day, have curbside pickup, and ship books across the country. Our next poetry event will be the book launch for Kemi Alabi's Against Heaven on April 5th. But tonight, we are all here for Paul Tran, who will be joined by poets Alison C Rollins and Nate Marshall as we all celebrate all the flowers kneeling. There will be reading, conversation, and questions this evening. I encourage you to leave comments in the chat, use the Ask a Question box, and just so you know, there will be a recording at this same link after the event, and it will be on YouTube with closed captions. I'm going to read everyone's bio in the order in which they're going to read this evening, and then give a short introduction to All the Flowers Kneeling. Nate Marshall is an award-winning writer, editor, educator, and MC. His most recent book, Finna, was recognized as one of the best books of 2020 by NPR and the New York Public Library. His first book, Wild Hundreds, was honored with the Black Caucus of the American Library Association's Award for Poetry Book of the Year and the Great Lakes College Association's New Writer Award. He was also an editor of the Breakbeat Poets, New American Poetry in the Age of Hip Hop. Allison C Rollins is currently an MFA candidate at Brown University. In 2019, she was named a National Endowment for the Arts Literature Fellow. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in American Poetry Review, Gulf Coast, the New York Times Magazine, and elsewhere. A Cave Canem and Callaloo Fellow. She was a 2016 recipient of the Poetry Foundation's Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship. Rollins has been awarded support from Bread Loaf and is a recipient of the 2018 Rana Jaffe Writers Award. A 2020 Pushcart Prize winner, her debut poetry collection, Library of Small Catastrophes, was a 2020 Hurston Wright Foundation Legacy Award nominee. Paul Tran received their BA in History from Brown University and MFA in Poetry from Washington University in St. Louis, where they were the Chancellor's Graduate Fellow and Senior Poetry Fellow. They have been awarded a 2021 Fellowship in Literature from the National Endowments for the Arts, the Ruth Lilly and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation, and the Discovery Boston Review Poetry Prize. Currently a Wallace Stegner Fellow at Stanford University, Paul's work appears in the New Yorker, Poetry, and elsewhere. Tonight, I'm just so excited to celebrate Paul Tran's debut book of poems, All the Flowers Kneeling. I've personally been anticipating this book for years, and I'm so glad, Paul, that you are here with us tonight, that you survived and continue to survive with lipstick, with smoke and ash, by holding your mother's hand, by creating new poetic forms and charting historical paths. You are bioluminescent. You write, in the most extreme conditions, we proved that life can exist. I exist. And you bring so much light with you everywhere you go. Thank you, everyone.
All right, I'm unmuted. I did it. Okay. This is so great. Oh man, I'm gonna not cry. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna not do that. It's on my to-do list. It's to not. All right. I'm gonna read some poems. Um, I'll read like three sort of short poems. I'm so happy to be here to celebrate Paula. Um, this first poem is called All Bald for the Whole Hood. Today, I offer myself all the small kindnesses. I'm out here with breath in my body, though it may be stank, and body in my control, though it may be too much or not enough. Today, I offer the whole crib a jam we ain't heard in a minute and permission to turn the news down and move a hip like a suggestion to a lover. On this day, I declare the pockmarked street I grew up on a miracle. I declare the bills, even the overdue ones, a blessing. Who knew that we would still be here to see these injustices? How can we measure the disrespect of lack against that precious surprise? Real talk, today I tell myself truths other than the ones that make me low. I give myself the gift of a joke with the homies. Real talk, today I stay woke to all the terror, but also to my favorite food or my favorite place, and I work, or my best hope for our people, and I work to make all my best lives possible. Cool. Then I'll read it. Some old and something new. All right. Yeah, this poem is called Picking Flowers. Yeah, there's not really anything you need to know going into this one. Picking flowers. Grandma's rose bush, reminiscent of a vice lord's do-rag. The unfamiliar bloom in Mrs. Bradley's yard banging a gangster disciple style blue. The dandelions all over the park putting on Latin King gold like the Chicano cats over east before they turn into a puff of smoke like all us colored boys. Picking dandelions will ruin your hands, turn their smell into a bitter cologne. A man carries flowers for three reasons. He is in love, he is in mourning, he is a flower salesman. I'm on the express train passing stops to a lover, maybe she's home. I have a bouquet in my hand laid on one of my arms like a shotgun. The color is brilliant. A gang war wrapped and cut diagonal at the stems. I am not a flower salesman. That is the only thing I know. Yeah. Though I guess one no that little thing in the middle, like a man carries flowers for three reasons. That was like a piece of like street art I saw once, and I was like, I'm gonna use that. That's funny to me. And I'll read this. This is sort of a new poem. So like I love Paula a lot, and like one thing that a lot of people perhaps don't know, but is like one of a myriad of reasons why I love Paula is because Paula is so me and Allison are betrothed. We like each other so much we're gonna sign contracts with the government about it, which I don't know is interesting. But the reason how that happened was kind of because of Paula, because Paula likes to gossip in the group chat. And so we were in a group chat and Paula was like, yo, I just seen Allison Rollins on a date with this dude, and he was fine. And I was like, wait a second, Allison Rollins is out here dating? And then I texted Allison like that week. And so, so shout out to Paula. Okay, so this poem is called Fan Letter, and it's a short one. It's just about, I guess all you really need to know is the first time that I ever spoke to Allison. It wasn't like speaking, it was Facebook message. It was because she had published a poem that was after this Amiri Baraka poem that was like one of the first poems that I ever really loved. And so I read the poem and was like, wow, this is cool. And I found her on Facebook and was just like, I really like that poem. And that was like how we first ever talked. So this poem is called Fan Letter. I remember reading the poem, pulled in by the title, a tale of shared influence, a shibboleth showing we had prayed at the same imperfect altar, a movement that moved me, a grand defense of the sample as science and art. How else would I have found you and knew you were meant to be kin? How else would I have made my way into your inbox, not to pitch woo, just to say, wow, you know the thing I know and know it well, and I want to read everything you have to write. Cool. That's it. So now, coming up to the stage, please give all your love, all your energy to Allison, Canada, Rollins.
Thank you so much, Pooh Bear. Paul Tran is to me known as Paula, and they are my little sisters, so I get to cry and I also get to embarrass them. So I only prepared 2 poems to read, but I'll fill them in with little. This is like family reunion to me. Paula is literally a member of my family. So this is more like the cookout family reunion situation virtually than a reading for me. So I'm just going to read the 2 poems interspersed with little anecdotes. So the first poem I'm going to read is titled Garden of the Gods. And I was previously living in Colorado Springs with my partner, Nate. And Paula, as any high quality little sister will do, I believe texted me within 24 hours that they were headed on their way in the car with Hugh to come visit in Colorado Springs from, I guess, Bay Area. So I had 24-hour notice or so, and they arrived and came and stayed with us for a few days. And so we got to drive them through the Garden of the Gods area of Colorado, which is a beautiful area. And I remember working on a draft of this poem and going back to St. Louis to do a reading. And I believe sitting with Paula, I think we went and bought Danez Smith's book, Homie, that had just come out at Left Bank Books, a small independent bookstore in St. Louis. And then we walked to Wildflower Restaurant, I think, and we closed down Wildflower. We were in there till the final moment, eating some little nibbles. And Paula worked through kind of editing this poem and thinking through different ways the stanzas could function and cutting words out and thinking through this and that. And they really have such skill and generosity and grace in their approach to revision and their approach to craft and their approach to formulating and to speculating and to imagining possibility in their own work. So this poem lives and exists in gratitude to them very much. Garden of the Gods. As a matter of black, I will trade a mountain for a river. What does that tell you about my makeup? I once met a cowboy. I said, "Let me hold your body. You know I'm good for it." He gave his consent. I wore him out. On paper thin sheets, I scissored a woman, her expression hard as a rock. She, a cliff dweller, a figurehead alien to my bizarre beauty. I, a queer mare, a stallion in the hands of an angry god. To be human is to be homeless, the furthest removed from grandeur. I've met my makers in flower beds of milkweed. No birds of paradise were there, only crows dark as echoes, juniper trees alive with want, coyotes aroused by the sound of cold glass. Between me and the world is a wind section of awe. Inside me, a desert of thistle. I've had enough of the belief in numberless fish and something other than longhorn skulls. Next to the vermilion spires, I feel small, my nature second to none. Watch the gods scurry like daddy longlegs, moved by a higher power. Okay, so that is that piece. And then I have to echo Nate's sentiment because we are getting married this summer, and I have selected dearest Paula to be my poet of honor. And so because Paula is extremely dramatic and always goes above and beyond, I had, this will be coming to you in the mail, Paula, but I had an official poet of honor card designed for you. And this features Paula in an outfit they wore for Cam Awkward Rich's book launch. And I just want to allow, this was pre-COVID, so pre-times, and it was a very rainy, dark, dismal night, but Paula was not deterred. Paula wore a beautiful floor length, because it was trailing taffeta pink gown, as well as light gray suede boots in the rain. We had to go to multiple locations, and they wrote, I believe, an original poem and performed it from memory for that evening. And so it's just a testament to, as I said, Paula is extra to the T, but it is a full programmatic ensemble that is incredible. The first and only poet I know to have a full service kind of music video accompanying a launch of a full length production. It just speaks to their incredible fabulousness. So I'm going to read a poem that I actually workshopped in my MFA just yesterday. And Paula attended Brown University for undergrad, and I'm here for my MFA. So I like to think very fondly that the ghosts, previous ghosts of Paula, previous ghosts of Franny Choi, previous ghosts of Fatima Asghar are somehow still floating and giving me some type of energy of uplift as I trek through maybe some of the same buildings or some of the same areas of the campus, some of the same areas of Providence. And so it makes me feel renewed and a little bit more grounded in the virtual continued pandemic that we're in. So this poem is called Wives Are Little Foxes, and it takes the language of foxes and tender grapes from the Bible, from Song of Solomon, and kind of weaves it into an odd or uncanny genderqueer exploration of what it means to be perhaps a wife. Wives are little foxes. Take us, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines put forth tender grapes. Not all wives are little foxes, but all foxes are wives. All grapes in a refrigerator belong to somebody, and it is that body that is often tender-headed, spoiled. Happy wife means happy life if you're foxy. I'm talking nasty, half wolf, half cat, painted fire truck orange with sin. When wives crawl on all fours, their paws get black with soot. Go clean yourself up. A good wife lets her chin hairs grow long as whiskers. Little lust bucket of the wild, come, fill my cup with vines. Okay, I'll probably get in trouble, but I'm just going to read two poems because I really want to hear from Sister and hopefully have time for Q&A and conversation and talking, engaging with you all. So I'm going to turn the virtual mic over to love of my life, the sister that I got to choose, Paul Tran.
I love you both so so deeply. Lipstick elegy. I climbed down to the beach facing the Pacific Ocean, where torrents of rain shur the sand. On the other side, my grandmother sleeps soundlessly in her bed, her aoyai of the whitest silk. My mother knew her mother died long before the telephone rang like bells, announcing the last American helicopter leaving Saigon. Arrow shot back to its bow, long distance missile. I know she would fly home if she could. She works overtime instead. Curls her hair with hot rollers, rouges her cheeks like Gong Li in Raise the Red Lantern, and I'm her understudy, hiding in the doorway between her grief and mine. I apply her foundation to my face. I conceal the parts of me that she conceals, puckering my lips as if to kiss a man who would want to love me the way I wanted to be loved. And I said, all their bewitching names aloud. Twisted rose, fuchsia in Paris, irreverence. I picked the lipstick she would least approve. Wrapped a white towel around my waist, danced for hours in the kitchen, checking my reflection in a chart skillet. I laughed her laugh, the way my grandmother used to laugh when she taught me to pray from the Yudai Bi, when I braided her hair in the unbearable heat, my tiny fingers weaving each silver strand into a fishtail, a French twist, each knot another child she never got to name. I'm sorry. Mother of my mother, immortal Buddha with 1,000 hands, chewing a fist of beetle root, your teeth black as dawn. No child in our family stays a child their mother can love. The poems in this collection emerged about 9 years ago when I was raped in college. And it made me reckon with the fact that I had been molested as a child by my father, that the women in my family, generation after generation, have had to survive this violence as a part of the American war in Vietnam, as a part of the French Indochina War. And it made me want to understand how they did it. And so the word rape does not appear anywhere in this book. The word trauma does not appear anywhere in this book. Instead, this is a book about survival. What does survival look like? What have we been told survival to be? Can one person, can a queer and trans person of color redefine what this means on their own terms, in their own words, for their own purposes? And I don't know, one of the most difficult questions I had to contend with was whether or not I even wanted to change my life, to be happy, to have a new story. And I don't know, so this next poem contends with that. Galileo. I thought I could stop time by taking apart the clock. Minute hand, hour hand, nothing can keep. Nothing is kept, only kept track of. I felt passing seconds accumulate like dead calves in a thunderstorm of the mind, no longer a mind, but a page torn from the dictionary with the definition of the word self effaced. I couldn't face it. The world moving on as if nothing happened. Everyone I knew got up, got dressed, went to work, went home. There were parties, ecstasy, Hennessy, dancing around each other. Blunts rolled to keep thought after thought from roiling inside me like wind across water, coercing shapelessness into shape. I put on my best face. I was glamour, I was grammar, yet my best could not best my beast. I too had been taken apart. And I didn't want to be fixed. I wanted everything dismantled and useless like me. Case, wheel, hands, dial, face, which are all parts of a clock, just so we know, for the record. But even at my lowest, I had people who loved me and who I saw as examples of what triumph looked like, what it looked like to make a life again, what it looked like to start over. And even when I was far away from the people that I loved, I had art and history and literature and all these examples of women who have triumphed time after time. One of them being the artist Artemisia Gentileschi, who in 1620 was one of the first women of her period to testify against her assailant in public court. And she made this incredible painting, Judith slaying Holofernes, which is it has this incredible image of the biblical figure Judith, who in the Bible, after her village is pillaged by soldiers, she sneaks with her maidservant into the tent of the general, and in the middle of the night, she does the incredible. She seduces him, and she beheads him, of course. And so this poem borrows its voice from Judith. I know better than to leave the house without my good dress, my good knife, like a crucifix between my stone breasts. My mother would have me whipped for that. She'd have me kneel on rice until I shrilled so loud. I rang the church bells. Didn't I tell you? She would remind me that elegance is our revenge, that there are neither victims nor victors, but the bitch we envy in the end. I am that bitch. I'm so dogged, so damn not even. Death wanted me. He sent me back after you sacked my body the way your army sacked my village, stacked our headless idols in the river where our children impaled themselves on rocks. I exit night. I enter your tent, gilded in this bolt of stubborn sunlight. My sleeves, they're already rolled up, and I know what they'll say. I'm a slut for showing this much skin, this irreverence for what is seen when I ask to be seen. Look at me. My thigh lifts from your thigh. My mouth spits poison into your mouth. You nasty beauty. I'm no beast. But when my blade slides clean through your thick neck, while my maid keeps your blood off me and my good dress, it will be a song the parish sings for centuries. Tell Mary. Tell Eve. Go ahead and tell Salome and David about me. And watch all their faces, like yours, turn green. I want to read a really, really quick, a really, really small one, and then do a final poem. My sister Allison tells us that our grandma is a hawk, and I believe that in my spirit. And so this is for grandma, for all our grandmas. There's a clearing I go to in my mind when I miss my sisters. I find them there with my mother in the shadow of a tree, like the banyan that grew in my grandmother's front yard. Past the clearing is a cliff I've never approached. I'm approaching it now. From wherever the cliff leads down to, a hawk flies up. My sister says it's my grandmother. I thought divestment would make me a pure soul, but there's no purity. As long as I long for that, desire blemishes me. I'm marked by grief and the idea that something must emerge from grief. The difference was not unlike that difference between the fear I felt going toward the cliff and the fear I feel having gone, seeing what's beyond. And I want to close with a poem for my chosen family, Bioluminescence. There's a dark so deep beneath the sea, the creatures beget their own light. This feat, this fact of adaptation, I could say it's beautiful. Though the creatures are hideous. Lantern fish, hatchet fish, flashlight fish. I, not unlike them, forfeited beauty to glimpse the world hidden by eternal darkness. I subsisted on falling matter, unaware of where or why matter fell, and on the weaker creatures, beguiled by my luminosity, my hideous face, opening suddenly to take them in to a darkness darker and more eternal than this underworld under water. I swam and swam toward nowhere and nothing. I, after so much isolation, so much indifference, kept going, even if going meant only waiting, hovering in place, so far below, so far away from the rest of life, the earth made possible by and thereby dependent upon light. I did what I had to do. I stopped. I killed. I wanted to feel in my body at work, working to stay alive. So I swam, I kept going, I waited, I found myself without meaning to, without contriving any meaning at the time, in the company of creatures who, hideous like me, had to be their own illumination, their own God, their own Genesis, and often we feuded. Often we fused together like anglerfish, blood to blood, desire to desire. We were wild, bewildered, beautiful in our wilderness and wildness in the most extreme conditions. We proved that life can exist. I exist. I am my life, I thought, approaching at last the bottom of the sea. It wasn't the bottom, and it wasn't the sea. Okay, cool. Yes, we're done.
All right.
Oh my
That
God.
was great.
Hi.
Oh man. How you feel? That's my first. How you feeling?
Over the moon. just so lucky to be here with you both. I got my eyeliner on, so we're not gonna cry yet. We'll cry after. We'll cry after in the group chat together. Yeah.
Cry after.
Cry.
Cry as you're taking the makeup off, like a Viola Davis.
Yes. It was so beautiful. I can't even stand it.
I mean, so I guess I would like. We definitely have questions, but folks in the audience have some. Then, like, feel free to drop them in the little Q&A box or just in the chat. I guess either way.
I'm ready.
I guess one question that I have. I love to think about like the beginning of a book, right? Whether that be like the first poem or the first couple of poems, just like how a thing kind of establishes itself. And so I'm curious for you, was it apparent like, oh, this poem is going to be like top or very high up, or was that something that you kind of figured out? If you could just talk about that process.
Yes. I feel like, everything about this book was built with intention. The fact that it has French flaps, well, that's my nod to French colonialism in Vietnam. This is payback. Look, you gave us tuberculosis, we gave you pho and banh mi, but now I get French flaps. The pages are deckled edges, and that's a nod to Harry Potter, but also, the torn self. The font is in Electra because Electra Complex. The title font is in Knockout because that's the goal. That is her goal, to be a knockout. Everything was built with intention. And so that first poem, whether or not this is the result, that first poem orchard of knowing. It's about an encounter between the Buddha and a brigand who is exiled from his country, sent to bring back evidence of 1,000 murders by making this necklace of 1,000 index fingers. And the Buddha intercepts him right before the final kill. And it's a story of conversion, of redemption, and was also the earliest story I ever remember my mother telling me. And so what I wanted in my first book, the book that introduces me to the world and the readers to me, was to share the first story I ever heard as a child from my mother. And, you know, I hope she likes that as evidence that I listened to her. She does not believe that I listened to her. But for me, it's a story that anyone can change and find their way back. And it's a poem, it's a sonnet. And so in the final couplet, it goes, I didn't mean the blade in your hand, I meant the blade in your mind. And I hope that that poem then sets up that the violence I'm really talking about is not actually, you know, the violence that occurred to me. It's the violence that lives on in the mind. And the violent mind of the person who committed this, you know, upon me. This book is not so much concerned about trauma as it is about the afterlife of it. How one's, you know, self-concept, behaviors, choices, beliefs is shaped by what happened. And therefore, in the process of survival, it's not just healing the physical wound that is made upon the body, it's healing the wound also in the mind. And so that's why that poem launches this book. And then the second poem, Incident Report, is in fact taken from reports that I had to fill out and reports that I felt named me with a label I didn't want to carry for myself, and asked me questions and only gave me a selection, you know, a limited selection of answers, and therefore no room to tell the story completely. And so we go from a poem where the violence is in the mind to a poem where the violence is in form and language itself. And even just formally between those two poems, we go from a received form, of course, the sonnet, to this found form in the world. And then later on, the book makes an entire intervention in that regard, but I'm trying to show all the permutations in which what I have had to endure has manifested. And so that's how the book opens up. The first section is the immediate aftermath of the incident. The second section goes into history. And then the third section, we pick up from where we left off. And the fourth looks at the future. And so each section is marked by time in that way, marked by effort in that way. But I think, Nate, I love your question because how it opens, how it begins is crucial. Yes.
Can I pose a question? Can we go back and forth?
Yeah.
Okay, so you have the line and you read it tonight. My good dress, it will be the song the parish sings for centuries. And I'm so curious to hear more about clothing, adornment, dressing, body armor as music, as musicality, as performance, as legacy, as hymnal that can be passed down, passed down, passed down. And I feel like every time I've seen you read, there's never a casual, there is a lot of intentionality in the presentation, in the incredible sense of style and adornment and fashion. And I'm curious, is there a way that you connect clothing to song or clothing to dance and performance, or a way that you're thinking about language's musicality in conversation with what the body wears, what the body adorns itself with?
Yes. I mean, I learned it first from my mom. She's a seamstress and a dry cleaner and has been working for a dry cleaner for 30 years, over 30 years. And when I was little, I would see all of these, incredibly dressed folks come in and out of her alteration store. People who had lives we could only speculate or dream about, whose homes we could stand in front of at Christmas and see all the lights strung up outside and wonder or realize how far away we were from what we imagined was inside. And yet, for my mom, being the only woman of color with a business in that little part of town, she felt she had to dress a certain way in order to be respected by her customers. And so every Saturday we took the bus down to the mall and would walk through, Macy's, JCPenney, Nordstrom's, all these stores, be followed, right, by the sales associates. And also, and sometimes rightfully so, because my mom, there was this period where I suspected she was taking labels home from the mall and putting them on her own dresses. She tells me not to tell her stories, but obviously some things I don't listen. And so here we are, just telling my mama's stories. But I learned from her that you can create a narrative about yourself through adornment. That you can not just create a narrative about yourself, but exact a reaction in another. And so when I was coming up in the poetry slam, I knew that my poem started long before I got up on stage, and it started long before I walked into the room. But when I did walk into the room, because poetry slam it collapses the category of someone's body of work with their actual body, right? We are seen, we have to be seen. How I present, I felt what I wore into the room was part of the poem. How good I felt in that was already part of the poem. And of course, it's a double-edged sword because, often I'm told, I'm not a real poet. I'm just someone on the internet, or, pretty gowns, beautiful gowns. But it's not unrelated to me. That poem, Allison, from which those lines emerged, that speaker is full of fury and rage, righteous rage, and a lot of stubbornness and hubris too. But she knew the occasion she was walking into. And I love that in the painting, it's this gorgeous, bright yellow dress. And the convention of the time was chiaroscuro, so we have this unlit background against which that golden dress is illuminated, as if she knew. And so for the writing of poetry itself, I imagine the poem on the page as a kind of choreography. I imagine the way it looks on the page as a kind of dress. I imagine the poetic line as in its own, integrity, a kind of dress-like movement. The way a dress moves through the air, those lines move across the page. When someone turns a corner and you do a double take, that is the moment of enjambment. That is when the line breaks, and but it's never decorative. It's never without meaning. And I don't know, I take that into my life. To never do anything without meaning, to never do anything for the embellishment only, to be essential always.
No, I love that. I mean, yeah, I do. There is this thing that happens, right, where people want to conflate beauty with frivolity,
Yes.
right? And yeah. And so I'm thinking about the way not only in the poems but also as a matter of like physical presentation, you're always like subverting that kind of reading, right? You're resisting that kind of.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, we don't have a tremendous amount of time, so certainly if anyone has questions, like please put them in the chat.
Yeah.
I guess one thing, just sort of zooming out, broadly, right? We were sort of joking about this before, when we were before the show started. This is such a strange time to put out a book, right? In this moment of like continuing pandemic, but also like deep fatigue, and for some people, a kind of, stepping out of whatever. And so, I'm just mindful of like how the already really charged, moment of putting a book in the world is heightened by the fact that it's the first one, and is heightened by all of these other things. And so I guess just maybe one thought is like, what sort of like wishes or intentions, do you have for the book? Besides like, not like the kind of, the silliness about like awards or sales or anything, but just like, yeah, what's your like, best hope for the book, I guess.
I mean, Nate, I feel like everything that I've hoped for this book has happened. Look at us here. And I'm not trying to be corny or cheesy about this, right? Like the fact that we are here, that I get to do this with you both, that is a dream come true. Because I've grown up watching you have your book releases, right? Like I've grown up watching you both have your book releases. Nia had 2 book releases.
Oh, look, also,
look how Paula's trying to play our age, though.
Is not that much younger than like.
That was not the intention.
Like I grew up. Like you were 12.
I
was just a little girl when y'all were growing up. Okay.
I remember back in your day. You better relax.
When you old folks were releasing poems, I was dreaming about all the flowers dealing. Okay.
No. I mean, but y'all paved the way. You built the bridge. You opened the door. You walk so I could power walk. Like.
If you don't stop talking about us like we're Rosa Parks.
but to be honest, like I felt so I just thought my life was one thing for a really long time. That I was the girl that this happened to. And that I was the poet who wrote about this. And that my life could only matter if I continued mining this. And for a long time, I wondered, when do I get to live? When do I get to dream? To be someone else? And writing these poems helped me get there. Finishing the book was like finishing that chapter. Now, whenever I write a new poem, it's not that I don't go back to these topics, but it's like, oh, I get to have new questions. So if All the Flowers Kneeling is about survival, now I get to ask, well, what is happiness? What is love? What does family mean? What does it mean to want so badly to be known and to be afraid of people knowing you? What does it really mean to start over and to build a new life when you don't know what that new life looks like? I get to ask all these new questions. And I get to have this thing that I can hold with the poems in there that are each a record of something I had to learn. I think of my poetics as one of investigation and discovery. And so every poem is a record of something I had to learn because I'm going to forget. And history has, a habit of repeating itself. And so here with this book, I can go back and learn it again. I can learn what I forget. I can learn how to be better. Do I hope that others find the same refuge? Yes. Do I hope that this book lands in a public library where some, some high schooler who has no friends, who spends their afternoons there because that's the only safe place that they can walk through the aisles and see a last name that's familiar or that they share and open up and find our story in literature? Yes, I hope that. Do I hope that the things that I do with language can inspire other poets from backgrounds like ours to see themselves not only as, we've had to prove that we can do poetry, but we're also inventors, innovators. We have groundbreaking thinking. I want to center that. And so I hope it does all those things. But in terms of what I can ask for, the book has given me that. And I hope it makes me a better little sister to you both. Ooh. Emphasis on the little.
Once again, the shade.
No shade. No shade.
It's okay. There's some some questions in the chat.
Let's go.
Let's see. Has your relationship with or understanding of your mother changed through writing these poems? And did you learn anything new about each other?
Oh my God, yes. There's one poem that was really painful to write. It's The Year of the Monkey. It was the final section. I must have written so many versions of this. I wrote one that Luther Hughes published in the Shade Journal, one on napkins at an AWP offsite reading, and I just kept having to rewrite it because it was never the truth. And part of that poem, I had to just say, I wish she had done something to save me when I was little. I wished. Instead of denying what happened and telling me it didn't happen, I wish she could have saved me. And I know she, if she could have, maybe she would have. It's one of those things, if could, would. But I never said it aloud. And saying it aloud let me reckon with the fact that actually she did the best she could. And that is where the poems led me to. She did the absolute best she could. And I have to let go of all the things that I wish were done, that I wish were different, and accept the world as it was in order to accept the world now as it is and to imagine a different world for us going forward. Writing these poems have made me love her more. And I'm really proud that her name is in this book, that her name is in literature somewhere. It's in the book a couple times. My mom's Vietnamese name is Giang, which means war. And so growing up, I always said that I was a child of war, which is not hyperbolic. But, and also my dad's name is Me, which is the Vietnamese word for America. And so just imagine that, being a child of a woman named War and a man named America. It really means beauty, but it's also the same word for America. But, irony. In any case, I'm just proud that her name now is in literature because she is poetry to me. So yeah. Are there more questions, more inquiries?
There's just one more in the chat. I'm sorry, I was having feelings. I guess just if you could talk some about. Well, we have two, so I'll sort of pose them both to you as we kind of prepare to wrap up. So one, Maya wanted to know about your decision-making process around putting the book into sections, and had you considered alternative titles for the sections. And then Christina wanted you to talk about the Hydra.
Ooh, cool, cool, cool. Okay. In regards to the sections, I was really inspired by the Greek rhetorical figure of Chiasmus. And so Chiasmus it's when a double cage occurs. In a rhyme scheme, for example, that would be A, B, B, A. The outside cage of A, the inside cage of B. It's similar to when we go, I love you because I hate you. I hate you because I love you. Love, hate, hate, love. And when that figure occurs in writing, it signals emotional and psychological entrapment. And so, which was my life. And so I thought naturally, okay, this book is going to be in 4 sections. And it's chiastic. If you look at the table of contents, we open with the orchard poem, we end with an orchard poem. In the middle, the second section opens with a poem called The Cave. The third section ends with a poem called The Cave. So we go through this orchard, we enter this cave, we're inside history, we exit the cave, we're back in the orchard. That is part of it. There are also other poems that create more cages in the book. One being the incident and progress report poems, and another being a sonnet crown called Scheherazade that is broken into 2 halves. The first half is in the first section, the second half is in the last. And I just thought, for a story like mine, people want progress. People want to say, ooh, you faced it, you overcame it. But that's not always the case. This lingers. The past haunts. And so naturally, I thought this book has to reflect that experience. And now in terms of the invented form, the Hydra, which appears in section 3, it's the heart of the book. I'm by and large a free verse poet. I think of form not as constraints or as a container, but a way to liberation. As a queer and trans person, I've had to look for forms for my dreams and my future my whole life. I had to imagine how to be the first in my family to graduate high school, go to college, all those things. I had to find a form for myself, this body. And when I thought about the received forms we are taught, it felt as if none of them accurately reflected the experience I was going through. And so I was really lucky that in our graduate prosody seminar, Carl Phillips assigned our final assignment was to invent a poetic form that mirrored an experience in our life, that had about it an emotional and psychological dimension. And so I wanted to reimagine the tradition of the sonnet crown, and the sestina for 3 reasons. 1, the sonnet has those 14 lines, typically concluding on a couplet that reaches for closure, reaches for certitude. And instead, this invented form, it has 13 as a way of saying, I'm going to stop short of conclusion, of revelation and epiphany. And then the sonnet crown tradition takes typically that final line of one sonnet and makes it the first line of the next, as a way of suggesting that one experience is cleanly imported to another. And I never felt that. I felt that maybe I learned a lesson and I forgot it. Maybe I learned a lesson, but I continued making mistakes. Nevertheless, I did learn it. And so instead, the Hydra takes the final line of each section, which has 13 words. So each section has 13 lines, and the final line has 13 words. Those 13 words each become the first word of each line in the next poem. So, for example, the penultimate section ends, invention, I found a way, I'm no artifact, between art and fact, I. And so the next section, all of those first words are invention, I found a way, I'm no artifact between art and fact, I. That's how the next section begins. And this means that what I've learned does live on, but in bits and pieces. And in terms of the sestina, and in terms of rhyme in poetry, they're usually at the end of the poetic line. Those recurring words in the sestina happen at the end. Those rhyming words happen at the end. And so when we write and those receive forms anyway, we move from an unknown beginning to a known end on the poetic line. And that is not how my life has worked. I have moved from a known beginning, whether it was my family's poverty, our refugee status, whether it was being a rape survivor, to an unknown end. Where will I go in this next phase of my life? What will happen to me? I don't know. And so that is why I had to put those recurring words at the beginning. I start from what I know and I move towards what I don't know. And so it's an invented form that has purpose for the writer, and it has a purpose for the reader too. And I'm not saying that it's, this is by no means the form for this experience. It's just one that I made for mine. And I'm hoping that it encourages other poets, particularly poets like us, to see themselves as inventors and to see form not in terms of constraint or containment, but freedom, agency, intentionality, deliberateness. I think always of Audre Lorde, I am deliberate and therefore not afraid. And so I think inventing our own, making our own worlds, that is being deliberate and being fearless.
Okay, well, in terms of inventing our own worlds and being deliberate, I was gonna show you by my door, grandma was here, and
yes.
Grandma enjoyed your reading and she's proud of you. And I was wondering, maybe did you want to speak to the, I hope this doesn't sound too hotepi, but speak to the ancestors, or is there any message in a language known or unknown, or any kind of anything that you just want to put in the air across time and space, that's for the past, that's for the future in this moment, just a little token to kind of to give to those that came before and will come.
Yes. I wrote, my mom taught me this prayer when I was little, and it's 84 incarnations of the Buddha that we pray to, the Bodhisattva who has chosen not to go to heaven, but to stay on earth until all who suffers are free. And these are 84 early recorded forms that that she took to save the world, essentially. But also, each time we pray, we have to like stand all the way up and then bow all the way down. And so it's like 84 burpees. So it's just a lot. But I wrote it in my author copy of the book. And I don't know, I guess maybe I can say the last part, which I wrote in English, to the ancestors.
You read whatever language you want to read.
No, I'll just say the last part. Namo Guangtia Ambodak. Please let me find grace. Let me receive grace. Let me feel the grace of the world move through me, bringing me closer and closer to my purpose, my dreams, my happiness and truth and power. Let grace be enough, please. Let me be armor and sword, wing and sky. Let me be my greatest thing. Whatever my life is, please let me save it. Let me show what I can do. And so that's in the back here, just in my handwriting. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
H
Thank you so much to Paula and Nate and Allison for being here tonight. Please get your copy of All the Flowers Kneeling. It is absolutely gorgeous, and big congratulations to you. Tonight was amazing, and I hope that there is more for you in terms of continuing that journey from survival to joy and to dreaming and to imagining the future. So I wish that for you, and I hope to be in that future with you. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. Oh my God. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Nate. Thank you, H Melt.
Of course. Love you all.